Hello everyone, Big Seven here, back for another SuperCoach video, and I've got off to a hot start. 2,145, pretty chuffed with that. But in saying that, it's round one. Don't get too ahead of yourself or too beat up. Still so much of the season to play out, and the thing that is more important than the score this week is how the team is structured up, how it's looking going into future weeks, what fires you need to put out, and I'm pretty happy with that, the team that I've built. So without any further ado, let's get into the side. So I ended up, Elliot Yo's news caused me to basically fully restructure the side, went around in circles for a few days, and then eventually settled on a structure that I liked. So down back, I've gone with 3 premium options: Sicily, Doherty, Dawson, all solid but unspectacular. Still happy to have those guys. A bit of carnage down back this week with Tom Stewart getting injured. Pretty unlucky if you happen to have him. And also Liam Jones, who I had in my team reveal, but I got cold feet on. His scoring has been erratic throughout his career. I was a bit worried about what would happen if he has a low score. And he was on track for a low score, but also got injured. So, look, he is a player that's going to be quite volatile in his scoring, capable of spikes, but capable of these low scores as well. Yes, he did get injured, but he wasn't tracking for a good score anyway. So gone with 3 premiums, 3 defenders: Jinby, McKenna, and Constable. Constable, I'm hoping can hold his spot. Otherwise, it's going to probably be a restructure. But I think having the 3 premium defenders puts me in a decent spot to deal with that. I know some people have gone for 2 plus Liam Jones. I think it just leaves things a bit precarious. So happy with the team structure there. Wilmot and Cowan both riding the bench. And then the midfield got a little bit of a pod flavour in there. Marcus Bontempelli, obviously highly owned, but it's more the players that I don't have. I don't have Laird. I don't have Clayton Oliver. I just didn't want to pay up 700k for those guys when I wanted to spend the money elsewhere, and I thought there was a lot of value in midfield. Second player I have, Luke Davies-Uniacke. Mentioned him in my 7 premium midfielders. And look, he was someone that was really in consideration all throughout preseason. Then he had a bad game against the Western Bulldogs, and honestly wasn't going to come back into my side until that Friday night game. And I watched Nick Dacos absolutely torch the Cats, and I was like, oh no. I need to think of a contingency plan to get him in. And going into Friday night, my team was a little bit different. I had, instead of Davies-Uniacke, I had Lockie Ash as a mid-pricer, and I had the money from that spread out a bit more. And with Dacos, I thought, I need a contingency plan. So I brought in Luke Davies-Uniacke as a punt, knowing that if he did poorly against West Coast, it was going to be a straight swap to Nick Dacos using DPP, and that would have got me a 4 premium structure that I really think is the way going forward. But instead, I'm stuck with Luke Davies-Uniacke, 143. I'm not complaining about that at all. See how he does against Fremantle this week. Honestly, someone that is still on the chopping block for me, might be harsh, 143. But Nick Dacos just looks so good. And Davies-Uniacke, yes, it was a big score, but it also was against West Coast too. I rate as the worst midfield team in the comp at the moment. So I basically want to see, can LDU back it up against Fremantle, who they've got a great midfield. Sean Darcy, Brayshaw, Sarong, Jago O'Meara. If he can go 100 and maybe 105 against those guys, then I'll be convinced LDU is a long-term option. If he doesn't, I'm going to be very tempted to give him the flick to Nick Dacos, because Dacos looked phenomenal. And if I'm without a 500k defender that could be a keeper, I feel like I'm a bit behind the 8 ball. So, Dacos, someone I'm really trying to get in. LDU, very good this week, but someone that is potentially cuttable. Tom Green is my third and final premium midfielder. I didn't have him captain. I'll show you what the team was like, actually. So the team was... Yeah, so the team was like this. So all the defenders were the same that I went through. I had Bontempelli as my captain, 107. And look, in isolation, you see 107, and it's like, oh, that's a poor captain score. But most people would have gone for Clayton Oliver, who only scored, I think it was 111, or Rory Laird, who, wow, 50 score. No one saw that coming. Literally no one. I think the last time he did that in a full game was 2014. I get that it was hot there, but wow, 50 score from Laird. That I'm lost for words. No one could see that coming. And if you're a Rory Laird owner that captained him, man, which crack did you step on? How many broken mirrors have you looked into? It's just very unlucky. And then the mid prices I've gone for in midfield: Jacob Hopper and James Worpel. Hopper was a little bit underwhelming, but he has a good role, so I think he will still be okay. Might be a bit of a slow burn, but I'm willing to stick fat with him at least for this week. And then James Worpel got a great role and capitalized on that. 97 points. I think he can go between 90 to 95 this year. So Worpel, very happy with him. If you don't have him, I think you need to get him. And then midfield rookies. Ashcroft, underwhelming, still scored 55. Brisbane got smashed. I'm not reading too much into that. Mackenzie, very good on debut, 93. He's basically everything we wish that Josh Ward was last year. Had a good preseason game and then backed it up with a good round one game. He looks pretty classy. Happy to have him in the side. And then Jack Bytel, 71, decent score. We'll take that in the end, considering if you take a look at F7, what happened there. I'll go through that in a sec. Ruckline, Sean Darcy, Rowan Marshall playing each other, tough matchups. And it was, in a way, expected. I was hoping they would do a little bit better, obviously. But 96 from Sean Darcy, there is no doubt that he's the number one ruckman. So if you faded him for that reason, then you are just straight wrong. And Sean Darcy, a couple of really good fixtures coming up as well. He has North Melbourne, which is Goldstein, and West Coast, who I'm not even sure if Nick Nat's going to be back for that. Either way, both games that Sean Darcy has dominated in recent history. So, very happy to have Darcy. Do not get rid of him if you own him. Or actually, no, do get rid of him if you own him so I can laugh at you. Because Sean Darcy, I love this guy. Leave him in your side, honestly. Rowan Marshall was the one I had a few doubts about, just because I wasn't sure if he was going to match it with the top guys, being Darcy, English, and Witts. But getting him at about 100k discount, as long as you can go within 10 to 15 points per game with those guys, then I think it will be fine. I wish I had have had the 100k to go up to Wits, but I didn't, and it wasn't worth destroying the structure for. So Rowan Marshall, clear hold for me. Has some toughish matchups coming up, but he's probably a season-long holder, so I wouldn't get too discouraged by Marshall yet. And then the forward line, the six forwards I've got on field, they didn't change. Dunkley, Rosie, Taranto, Goulden, all of them somewhere between solid and very good. No qualms over any of those. Could have had Caniglio in there, but you just I just couldn't fit them all in. So if you picked Cogs, well done. Looking like a good pick. Also coming up against West Coast, so good fixtures. But I'm not too disappointed with the players that I've got here. And then the two mid-price forwards, Tanner Bruin, started the game against Collingwood really well. And then Parfitt got subbed into the game. So I think that's a pretty valid excuse for his drop-off in scoring. He had low time on ground, and the CBAs, as the game went longer and longer, diminished. And he did look good when he was in the centre bounces. So I think it was just a case of a unbalanced team structure once Tom Stewart was subbed out, Parfitt being another midfielder forward type. But Bruin, I think, is definitely worth another watch going into this week. And then the last player I have is Sam Flanders. And Flanders didn't I didn't watch the game, but his scoring was underwhelming until he picked up a lot of junk points. Um, I'm willing to give him a mulligan here. Gold Coast did get smashed by Sydney, so 64 is kind of respectable. I want to see what he does going into next week. And then my bench, Sheasel. Ah, mixed emotions, but mostly happy that I've got him. So I ended up going to the North Melbourne West Coast game as a neutral supporter, entirely to see where Sheasel was going to be lining up. I saw some rumours floating around on the Saturday morning that he might play a mix of halfback, he might play forward. There was no clarity on the situation whatsoever, so I thought, you know what, let's go down there, see what eventuates. After they ran out through the banner, saw him. They split off into three groups. The midfielders were in one group, the forwards were in another group, and then Sheasel was gloriously with the defenders in the third group. And then saw him walking back to the defense. So he was someone that was locked in since then. But also, I forgot to check my team in that 5 minutes. I was focused on my draft stars lineups because I had Sheasel in my SuperCoach side, but I didn't have him in my draft stars lineup, so did that, and then forgot to go back to the SuperCoach and check that he was on field. So I would have fielded him over Bartel using I would have gone Flanders into the midfield using the loop and Sheasel on field and Flanders on field for Bartel. Only cost me about 43 points in the end, so it's not worth crying about. And I think, the main thing going into the next couple of weeks is having a team structure that you are happy with and having as few fires as possible. And when I look at this team, there's a lot of players that I would like to get in, but I don't think there's anyone that is a must-have at this stage. And then looking at the players in my team, and there are players I could potentially get rid of in terms of mid-prices. Hopper, Bruin, and Flanders, they underperformed, but I think it would be an overreaction to jump onto someone like a Horn Francis or a Setterfield or a Zeeble, because it's only been a one-game sample. And looking at scoring from the past, I thought I had it up, but I don't. Scoring from the past. No, I must have got rid of it. Okay. So looking at round one scoring from last year, the two players that scored the most that were under 400k were Matt Rowell and Luke McDonald. Matt Rowell obviously didn't do that great. Afterwards, he really tapered off, and Luke McDonald, I think he made about 60k, so he wouldn't have been a worthwhile trade in. And there were guys last year that did score well in round one and that would have been good trade ins, guys like Witts, George Hewitt. I think there was someone else, but there's also other guys like Luke McDonald, Rowell, Pat Lipinski scored 130 in round one, and he wouldn't have been a worthwhile trade in, but he looked really good in round one. So I'm very wary of making trades based on a one-game sample size. The players that I'm looking at going into round three as potential trade-ins, Will Setterfield, Jack Zeeble, Horn Francis, Josh Rochelle looked really good as well. Maybe forgetting someone else, but I don't think there's anyone worth tearing the team apart for. The last player I really want to get into my side, mentioned it before, is Nick Dacos. The way I can potentially do that is through Luke Davies-Uniacke. Or the thing I will consider next week is cutting two of the mid prices. So that would be Hopper and Bruin, or maybe Flanders if I could afford that, which I think I could. Yeah, I'd be able to afford Hopper and Flanders, and I'd be able to use DPP, put Dacos in the defense, and someone like a Chandler in my forward line. On the topic of Chandler, he looked really good in his debut game. Probably the one rookie I regret not having. But in saying that, he's someone I can wait until next week for. Obviously, need to see how teams pan out. If someone like a Constable or a Chesser got dropped, then I'd be happy to move one of them to a Chandler. But otherwise, I don't think he's someone that needs to be brought in this week. And I think it's more a case of if I was trying to force him in this week, who am I forcing out? And that isn't clear for me. So currently looking to hold this side. If Constable Chess is dropped, then probably bring in Chandler. But yeah, I think, in general, if you do have a solid side, then don't make changes for the sake of it. I've been guilty of doing this in previous seasons, so I'm learning from my mistakes, I think. If you do have guys like Stewart, Josh Kelly, I think moving on from them is probably wise. Rory Laird, I think you wait a week for, because he did score poorly, but that 50 is only going to be in his price change cycle for 1 week. So if Laird was to go back-to-back 140s, then he would probably drop about 40 odd K, and then his price would stabilize. And I don't think that's worth a trade, but if he is to drop another poor one, then I think that is worth trading for. And then the other one, Liam Jones, he potentially might play this week. And yeah, like I said earlier, he's a volatile scorer, so I can understand wanting to move on from him. But he could also score well when he returns. If he does miss, it might only be a week. And in terms of defense options, I don't think they're really that solid. If you could trade Jones to a Chandler using DPP, or you're missing a really obvious one like Sheasel, then I think that's worth doing. But you've got your outlier options like your Tom Cole and the Crows guy, Max Michaelini, I think is the pronunciation. And I don't think they're worth trading Jones out for. And SuperCoach is being slow, so I'm not going to show you the prices on those. But yeah, in terms of everything else, I'm holding going into next week. I think unless you've got some really obvious fires that you need to put out, holding is probably the best form of action. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with the way the season started. Obviously, a long way to go. Make sure to join in next week to see if I'm still crowing or if I'm melting down. So I'll see you from the next video, and thanks very much for watching.